Hello and welcome back to Major League Talk Giants edition. Today is Thursday, May 25th, 2023. My name is Henry. This is episode 17, and we're going to be going over the series against the Minnesota Twins. By the way, the last episode 16, I mistakenly said that was the 14th series that the Giants played. It was the 15th series, so that's my bad. This was the 16th series, and the Giants went to Minnesota for a 3-game set. And I got to tell you, it feels good getting 2 out of 3. So another series win. But the last game left a sour taste in most people's mouths. I'll go ahead and preface that. But in game one, it was another story of the Giants getting all their offense in one inning and then hoping it would last out. And it did. The Giants ended up winning 4-1, the only run being given up by Tristan Beck. And they went with a semi bullpen game there. In game two, it was an odd way that the Giants won, in my opinion. They let the Twins give them the game. The Twins completely gave up the game. They had a 3-run lead, and that was going into the top of the sixth. And then the Giants scored 2 runs back-to-back innings and ended up winning 4-3. And then game 3 was one to forget. This was such a frustrating game from the standpoint of the defensive mistakes that happened and then the inability of the offense to really help produce. The Giants ended up winning 7-1, having 4 errors. And this was the game that left the most runners on base. But they still came away 2 out of 3. And today they start a 4-game set against the Brewers. We'll talk about that later. So the starters for each game were, in game 1, we opened with Brebbia and then went to Manaea to face Ober. In game 2, it was Cobb versus Gray. And then in game 3, Desclafani versus Ryan. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, as I said, game 1, we had Brebbia starting. He was the opener, excuse me. He only pitched the first inning. He got 2 strikeouts. And then after him came Manaea. And it was honestly the best showing that Manaea's had pretty much all year. He went 3.2, gave up only 3 hits, walked 3, but he did strike out 8 and allowed no runs, no home runs, no nothing like that. So very good showing by Manaea there. As for our own lineup, we had Wade Jr. at first. He went 0 for 3 with a walk and a run. Flores would come on to pinch hit in the 9th and then played first base. He went 0 for 1, striking out. Yastrzemski was in center. He went 0 for 4 with a walk, a strikeout, and a run. Davis was DHing. He went 1 for 4 with a strike, an RBI, and a run. Conforto was in right. He went 1 for 3 with a 3-run home run, a walk, and a strikeout. Sable was in left. He went 1 for 2 with 2 walks. And then Johnson would come into pinch run for him and then play left field. Did not get a chance to bat. Schmidt played third in this game. He went 0 for 4 with a strikeout. Bailey was catching. He went 0 for 4 with a strikeout. Crawford was at short. He went 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. And Wisely was at second. He went 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. So not a lot of production coming there from the 6, 7, 8, 9 hitters. Overall, 5 hits at 33 at-bats, 10 strikeouts, 5 walks, 1 home run, 4 RBIs, 4 runs. So as for the relief pitchers, Manaea did make it through to 2 outs in the 5th, but then Tristan Beck would come on to get the last out in the 5th via ground out, and then he'd come back out for the bottom of the 6th, getting a 1-2-3 inning on a ground out to second, a ground out to third, and a strikeout. And then in the 7th, he would come back out, another 1-2-3 inning, strikeout, strikeout, ground out. In the 8th, he would give up a home run to the first batter that he faced on a 2-0 count. But then he would strike out the next batter, and then he'd hit a batter. So he left with one on and one out. And that brought in Tyler Rogers, who would walk the first batter he faced. Now there's two on, but then he'd get two strikeouts to end the inning. And then in the ninth, it was Alexander who would come out. He would hit the first batter with a pitch, but then the next batter would ground into a double play, and then a line out ended the game. Giants winning 4-1. So for the pitcher report, I decided to focus on Manaea because he did pitch the most innings and he had a good outing. He went 3.2, like I said, throwing 83 pitches, 51 four-seam fastballs, 21 sliders, 8 changeups, and 3 sinkers. For his changeups, they averaged 88, the lowest at 85, the highest almost at 91. The four-seam fastballs averaged 93.9, almost 94. Lowest was 91. The highest was just over 96. The sinkers averaged 94.3. And then the sliders averaged 83.6. The lowest was almost 81. The highest was 86. The sliders did not have much lateral movement, just a lot of drop. And then the four seamers, everything else was going away from a right-handed batter, at least according to this center line. Good release point, all relatively the same release point. His strike zone coverage, the way that this pattern has it, it looks like it's starting up and away from a righty and then coming down and into a right-handed batter. He threw 43 pitches in the strike zone and 40 pitches out of the strike zone. Batters would swing at 31 of his pitches and take 52. They took a lot of his sliders. They only swung at 4 of his sliders and 3 of his changeups. And then because he threw so many four seamers, they took more than they swung at, but 35 balls, 31 strikes, 17 of them swinging, 14 of them called. The majority of his called strikes were off of, 17 called, 14 swinging. I apologize. And the majority of the swinging strikes were his four-seam fastball. 17 of his pitches were hit in a way, 11 foul tips, 3 hits for outs, the 3 base hits. 3 base hits were 2 fastballs and a changeup. Only got 1 hard hit, and it was a fastball ground ball. So good to see Manaea putting up a runless outing. That is positive movement. Calling the balls and strikes was a man named Alex Tosi. He has an overall accuracy of 95% and overall consistency of 95%. His overall favor was plus 0.25 runs for Minnesota. The impactful missed calls he had, the first one, top of the 6th, Pagan to Sable, 0 outs, runner on first, 2-0 count, a ball is called a strike. Second one, bottom of the 8th, Rogers to Castro, 2 outs, runners on first and second, 0-2 count, strike is called a ball. And then the third one, top of the 7th, Jacks to Wisely, no outs, bases empty, 1-2 count, a strike is called a ball. So called ball accuracy, 96%, 5 of 126 called balls were true strikes. Called strike accuracy was 93%, 4 of 54 called strikes were true balls. So I like seeing those accuracies in the mid to high 90s. Those are better. So that was game 1. Like I said, another example that we've seen this year of a lot of offense in one inning and then riding it out through the rest of the game, because in the first inning, it all was so had a walk, a double to score 1. So it was Wade Jr. walked, Yaz walked, Davis doubled to left. So Wade scored and Yaz will move to third. And then Conforto homered, a 3-run home run. And then after that, it was a walk, ground out, strikeout. But look at that. Davis RBI double, Conforto with a 3-run home run. And as for the offense as a whole, They left 7 on base, went 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. Yeah, Davis, Wisely, and Sable all hit doubles in the game. Defense only turned 1 double play. So, moving on to game 2. And as I said before, this was a Cobb start. And not a bad start for Cobb. Gave up 3 earned runs. All 3 of those were off of home runs, by the way. Bottom of the first, solo or a 2-run home run to Buxton, and then the bottom of the 5th, a solo home run. Cobb ended up going 7 full innings, giving up 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 8 strikeouts. Walked 1, and like I said, the 2 home runs. So not a terrible start to only give up 3 runs. So it was a quality start. Just wish it wasn't off home runs. As for our own lineup, yeah, I'd Wade Jr. at first. He went 2 for 5 with a strikeout. Estrada was playing shortstop, then moved over to second base. He went 1 for 5 with 2 strikeouts and a run. Davis was playing third. He went 0 for 4 with a walk, a strikeout, and a run. Conforto was in right. He went 2 for 5 with another home run, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs. And he also struck out twice. Haniger was in left. He went 1 for 4 with a walk. Yaz was in center. He went 1 for 2 with a strikeout. And then Schmidt would come into pinch hit and play shortstop. And then Schmidt would go 0 for 2. Sable was DHing. He went 1 for 2. Flores would come out to pinch hit for him and also DH, and Flores would go 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts. Bailey was 1 for 3 with an RBI, a walk, and a strikeout. Wisely was playing second. He went 1 for 2 with a strikeout. And then Johnson would come in a pinch hit for him and play center. Johnson went 0 for 1 with a walk, a strikeout, and an RBI. That's a total of 10 hits, 37 at bats, 12 strikeouts, but 4 runs. Luckily, those 4 runs were enough to win the game 4-3. So after Cobb went 7 full innings, Alexander would come out to pitch the 8th, and he'd have a 1-2-3 inning. Ground out, ground out, ground out. And then in the bottom of the 9th, he started to become automatic. It was Duvall. He would come out and he'd get a strikeout, hit a batter by a pitch, but then strike out the next batter. 3 strikeouts to get the save and let the Giants win 4-3. For the offense, they left 10 runners on base, went 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Conforto, Estrada, and Sable all hit doubles. For fielding, they turned 2 double plays, and Wade Jr. has earned his 4th error in this game on fielding. So yeah, like I said, those runs that the offense scored, it was the Twins game to lose. So if you go back and you look at the 2 runs they scored in the 6th, it was bases loaded. And Sonny Gray was still pitching in the top of the 6th. Davis walked, Conforto doubled, and then Haniger walked. So it's bases loaded. And then they brought out Schmidt for Yaz, and they took out Sonny Gray. Schmidt flew out. Flores struck out. Okay, so now it's bases loaded, 2 outs. Walk, run scored, new pitcher. Walk, run scored, and then finally a strikeout. So your starting pitcher let the bases get loaded. Your first relief pitcher gets 2 outs, but then walks a batter. You bring in a new pitcher, he walks the first batter he faces. So 2 runs given up by the Twins on bases loaded walks. And then the next inning, Estrada doubled, but then Davis would ground out, but then Conforto would hit a 2-run home run. So Conforto coming in pretty nicely in both games. A 3-run home run in the first one, a 2-run home run in the second one. Both ultimately the last bit of offense for the Giants in both games. So that's kind of interesting too. Both getting the Giants to 4 runs, which would ultimately win them both games. So Twins gave up game 2, 4-3. Let's look at the pitcher report. Alex Cobb threw 95 pitches through 7 innings, 46 sinkers, 23 knuckle curves, 22 splitters, and 4 sliders. His splitters were averaging 89.5. The slowest one, almost 88. The fastest one, almost 91. Knuckle curves averaging 83.8. Slowest 82. Fastest almost 85. His sinkers were all averaging 94.9. The slowest 93.5. The fastest just over 96. And then the 4 sliders averaged 86.3. A lot of drop from that knuckle curve. Slider had quite a bit of drop too. Those sinkers and splitters were tailing into a right-handed batter from that release point. Release point of almost 6 feet for him. His strike zone, not a huge like directional skew. Like there's not a major skew. It's a pretty good distribution around the strike zone. He threw 40 pitches in the strike zone and 55 out of the zone. Batters would swing at 40 and take 55. They swung at more splitters than they took. They took more knuckle curves than they swung at. And it's about an even distribution relative to the numbers of taking versus swinging for the sinkers. 31 balls, 33 strikes, 24 called strikes, 9 swinging. The swinging strikes were 6 knuckle curves and 3 splitters. 31 of his pitches were hit in the way, 13 foul tips, 11 hits for outs, and 7 base hits. 6 hard hit balls, 1 line drive, and 5 fly balls. Of the fly balls, 4 of them were splitters, 1 was a sinker. So good quality start from Cobb. Good on the offense to be able to put up 4 runs late in the game to get the win. Calling the balls and strikes was a man named Tony Randazzo. Overall accuracy 94%. Overall consistency 92%. His impactful missed calls. He had an overall favor of plus 0.05 runs for Minnesota. His impactful missed calls. The first one is top of the 6th, Gray to Haniger, no outs, runners on 2nd and 3rd. First pitch, a ball is called a strike. And then the next one, top of the 8th, Jacks to Flores, no outs, base is empty, 0-2 count, ball is called a strike. And then bottom of the 1st, Cobb to Solano, 1 out, base is empty, 0-2 count, strike is called a ball. So yeah, all 3 of those are against the Giants. Called ball accuracy, 99%. 1 of 101 called balls were true strikes. And his called strike accuracy was a bit low, 86%. 9 of 64 called strikes were true balls. So that sealed the series win for the Giants. The next game, like I said, was frustrating, to say the least. And here's my quick take on a game 3 when you've already won the first 2 games. Any baseball fan knows that it's hard to sweep unless you're playing one of the bottom like 3 teams of the league, and even sometimes you can have an off day. But sweeping is hard. And you're not getting a day off in between this series and the next series you play. You're playing 3 games and then 4 games. And I'll be honest, I would have been okay if the way that they had lost had only been like maybe by 1 run. like a 2-1 game, and the defense was sharp. The other team was just that much better. But to lose 7-1 with 4 errors, and you actually out hit the other team by 3 hits, that's frustrating to watch or to listen to or to follow for any fan. So to start, like I said, it was DeSclafani on the mound. Had a rough go of it. He gives up a leadoff home run in the bottom of the first, but we get that right back in the second. But then in the second, they ended up scoring a couple more times, and then he ends up with 4 earned runs, 7 total runs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, 6 hits over 5 innings, 2 home runs. So he was bookended by home runs. And then so not a great start for DeSclafani. He's now 3-4 on the season. His ERA is now 3.43. As for our offense, Wade Jr. was at first. He went 2 for 4 with a strikeout and a walk. Estrada was DHing. He went 2 for 5 with a strikeout. Haniger was in left. He went 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. Conforto was in right. He went 1 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. Sable was catching. He went 0 for 4 with a walk and a strikeout. Yaz was in center. He went 1 for 3 with a run and a strikeout. Flores would come in a pinch hit and then play third. Flores went 1 for 2 with a strikeout. Schmidt was playing third, then moved to second. He went 1 for 5 with an RBI and 3 strikeouts. Crawford was playing short. He went 1 for 2 with 2 walks and a strikeout. And Wisely was playing second and then moved to center. He went 1 for 4 with a strikeout. Anyway, so first out of the pen for the Giants in the 6th inning was Walker. So DeSclafani only pitched 5 innings because he did come out for the 6th and then gave up a home run to the first guy that he saw. So Kapler pulled in Walker. Walker has a 1-2-3 inning. Strikeout, strikeout, strikeout. And then in the bottom of the 7th, Walker comes out back out again. 1-2-3 inning. Strikeout, ground out, fly out. And then in the 8th, Taylor Rogers comes in and he has a scoreless inning. Infield single, ground out to third, walk, strikeout, line out. And then because the Giants were unable to put up any offense, they could not force the bottom of the 9th. So going back, let's look at our offense overall. And this is probably, the defense was bad, but this was also bad. 15 runners left on base. 2 for 16 with runners in scoring position. That's how you get 10 hits, but only 1 run right there. Crawford, Flores, Yaz, and Estrada all hit doubles. And then there were 4 errors, 2 on Crawford, 2 on Wisely. So overall, just a pretty sloppy game. DeSclafani had a wild pitch. DeSclafani hit Castro with a pitch. Let's quickly go over this pitcher report. DeSclafani threw 97 pitches, 38 sinkers, 29 sliders, 2 changeups, 19 knuckle curves, 9 four-seamers, and then 2 changeups. The four-seamers averaged 92.4. The knuckle curves averaged 82.2. The sinkers averaged 92.9. The sliders averaged 86.7. Knuckle curves had a lot of drop. Sliders didn't have much lateral movement. Four seamers, sinkers, and the changeups looked like they were coming into a right-handed batter per this reference line. About a 4.5, almost 5 foot release point. The spray across the strike zone. Looks like it was up and into a righty to down and out. He threw 49 pitches in the strike zone, threw 48 out of the zone. Batters swung at 41 of them and took 56. About an even distribution relative to taking to swinging for all the pitches he threw. 38 balls, 26 strikes, 15 of them called, 11 of them swinging. 33 of his pitches were contacted with, 16 foul hits, 8 hits for outs, and 9 base hits. Those 9 base hits, 5 sliders, 2 sinkers, 1 four-seamer, 1 changeup. 11 hard hits, 1 ground ball, 6 line drives, 3 fly balls, 1 pop-up. And just to go back and understand those home runs that he gave up. The first one, 0-1 count, a slider. And then the second one he gave up, that would be the last batter he faced. Full count, sinker. In case anybody was wondering. And then Todd Titchener was calling balls and strikes. He has an overall accuracy of 95%, overall consistency of 91%, overall favor plus 0.57 runs from Minnesota. His impactful missed calls, top of the 6th, Stewart to Estrada, no outs, bases loaded, 1-1 count, a ball is called a strike. The second one, bottom of the 7th, Walker to Solano, no outs, bases empty, 2-2 count, strike is called a ball. And then the third one, bottom of the 4th, DeSclafani to Taylor, no outs, bases empty, 2-1 count, strike is called a ball. So yeah, all 3 of those went against the Giants. Not that it was making that much of a difference, let's be honest, with the lack of offense, lack of ability to get runners across the plate for the offense. Called ball accuracy, 95%. 6 of 116 called balls are true strikes. Called strike accuracy, also 95%. 3 of 56 called strikes were true balls. So mid-90s there. That's good to see. All right, so that's the Twins series coming out 2-3 or 2-1 with the win. Like I said, that last game just left a lot to be desired. Sloppy game by the Giants. But this series does move them up to 24 and 25, 1 game under 500. They're now 6 games back of the Dodgers, who are still at the top at 31 and 20. Puts them at 4.5 games back of the Diamondbacks, who are sitting at 29 and 21. 2 games ahead of the Padres, who are 22 and 27. And 3.5 games ahead of the Rockies, who are 21 and 29. Fangraphs currently has the Giants at a 44.2% chance to make the playoffs and a 6.8% chance to win the division. And let's go ahead and take a look at some of the wild card standings to kind of put that into perspective. Right now, as it sits, of course, the 3 leaders, Atlanta, LA, and Milwaukee, and then Arizona, Pittsburgh, and then Miami and New York Mets are both tied. They're 25 and 25 for that 3rd spot. We're half a game back from the 3rd spot. And then 1 full game behind us are the Phillies at 23 and 26. That's pretty telling about the National League right now. The American League is a head and shoulders above the National League right now. When you look at the fact that the 2 teams that are tied for the 3rd spot in the wild card are right at 500, the team that's only half a game back is 1 game under, and the next team behind them is 3 games under. You look at the American League, where the person in the last spot of the wild card is the Astros, who are 28-21, and the team 1 game behind them are the Angels, who are 28-23, and behind them are 2 AL East at 26-24, the Boston Red Sox and the Toronto Blue Jays. You've got to go down one, two, three, four teams out of the wild card to get to the first team that's under 500 in the AL, and that's the Detroit Tigers at 22-25. So, that being said, that just means that the Giants, what they've got to start doing now is slowly and steadily just stacking on the series wins, minimize the amount of games that they have like yesterday, which I know is saying a lot of the obvious, but uh, and then I'm looking at the Giants roster resource page on Fangraphs right now, and when this roster came out at the beginning of the season, no one really had a lot of high expectations. I'll be honest, I looked at it, I was like, okay, we may be okay. We signed some guys that we wanted to get great seasons out of, looking at Conforto and Haniger. And, as far as the pitchers, we were hoping we could get them to be the best versions of themselves, looking at Mania, Taylor Rogers, and Stripling. But I think a lot of the general consensus around at least honest Giants fans is that we need more homegrown. You need the farm system to produce the best players that we're going to have, because that's the better chance you're going to have to truly win when it counts. Looking at our hitting, the Giants are 19th in average, 17th in on base percentage, 14th in OPS, 21st in runs scored, and 25th in stolen bases. We are only top 10 in home runs, 7th. Okay. Our starting pitchers are pretty good. 6th in ERA, 9th in whip, 2nd in walks per 9, 10th in home runs per 9, 14th in strikeouts per 9, and then 21st in hits per 9. That's where it kind of falls off. But hey, starters looking pretty good. And then you get to the relief pitchers. 28th in ERA, 26th in whip, 20th in walks per 9, 28th in hits per 9, 30th in home runs per 9. The thing that they rate higher in than anything else, strikeouts per 9 at 11. But I do want to say that the bullpen actually did really good in this series. When you look at the first game being basically a bullpen game, only giving up 1 run, and that was Tristan Beck, and he's a rookie. And then the next 2 games, the starters gave up the runs. The starters combined for 10 runs, and all the relievers combined for 0. So I do want to say, good job by the relievers in this series to do their jobs, do the best they could to allow the offense to try and pick up the game. Unfortunately, they just couldn't do it in the last game. Like I said, if it had been closer, like a 1-run game, I would not be as upset about the third game. But a 6-run game, when you out hit the other team by 3 hits because you had 4 errors, yeah, that's kind of gross. And we've got some guys that are cooling down. We knew that Schmidt was going to cool down. He can't really sustain an over 400 batting average. But hopefully he starts to pick it back up again, at least 1 hit a game, 2 hits a game. And only, let's limit the amount of hitless games to 1 at a time instead of getting back-to-back hitless games. Yaz is still trying to come back around after an IL stint. Davis kind of went cool in this game. or in this series, excuse me. Estrada's still kind of cooled off a little bit. We need him to get back to what he was in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Um, Conforto's starting to get it together. You know, both the two home runs that pretty much sealed games 1 and 2 came off of the bat of Conforto. And I think Haniger is kind of watching him and starting to pick it up a little bit too. Overall, I think the only reason I've got kind of a foul taste in my mouth about this series is because of the last game. We have the Brewers coming up next, 4 games against them in Milwaukee. And then we come home. Again, no break. So we just had 3 against the Twins. Now we're going to play 4 straight against Milwaukee and then 3 straight when we come home against Pittsburgh, who has drastically cooled off since their hot run to start the season. Our first off day will be Thursday, the 1st. And then we host Baltimore over the weekend, who is playing really good baseball right now. That will be a real test, I believe. We've already played Milwaukee once this year. So there shouldn't be too many surprises there. We do see Burns again during this time. Our projected starters are going to be Scott Alexander today, Alex Wood Friday, Webb on Saturday, and Cobb on Sunday. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, I'm hoping just at the very least for a 500 right there, 2-2. I would be happy with that. And then come back and take 2 out of 3 from Pittsburgh, and then taking 2 out of 3 from Baltimore would be really cool too. But we'll see. So that'll do it for this episode. If you have any tips, corrections, anything like that, any type of feedback, go ahead and let me know. I do appreciate any and all feedback that I get. For all of the references for today, Fangraphs, Baseball Reference, Baseball Savant, ESPN, and then the ump scorecards, and of course the Athletic, Andrew Bagley, Grant Brisbee, and NBC Sports Bay Area, Alex Pavlovich. Get a lot of information from all those different sources to make this show. And I will see you after the Milwaukee games. So have a good weekend. It's a holiday weekend. Be safe. Peace.